Oh man, guys, what a beautiful day. Coming in toward the end of spring, I noticed that the blackberry bushes out behind my house here are starting to bloom. That's all we're here talking about tonight. So grab your favorite beverage, find your favorite spot to sit back and watch Rolling with T-Bone, and listen as I spin the yarn about Rome, Ohio, 1981.
Welcome to Rolling with T-Bone Presents Cryptids, UFOs, and Paranormal Stories. I hope that you enjoy.
Now guys, Rome, Ohio is just like any other small town, nestled in a rural community. And for one family, this little rural community would turn into a nightmare over the course of spring and summer of 1981. Guys, this story would go on to include the police, investigators, and it would even have a book written about it. So guys, let's jump on the bike and let's talk about Rome, Ohio, 1981, and the story that has been dubbed Night Siege. All right, guys, as you can see, the return of the chest mount has happened. Nicer weather, able to wear my skid lid, not completely fry as I try to shoot these photo vlogs. But if you're wondering about this setup, if you will go down and scroll through some of my older videos, you'll see the setup, you'll see how I made it work. But that's not why we're here. We are here because of 1981 and the story Night Siege. Now, full disclosure, guys, when I first started with this story of Night Siege, it read like a science fiction novel. So tonight we're going to be diving into a little bit of the paranormal, a little bit of Bigfoot, could even be a little bit of Dogman, I don't know. But we're out rolling today on Jazz to do this. But this all began in Rome, Ohio, guys, in 1981. A man named Robert and his family was being attacked basically by these dark creatures that was in the woods behind their house. Now, the story Night Siege became very popular. Like I said, there was a book shot off of it. And then just as quickly as the story had begun, it died down. And but for the course of the summer for 1981, these poor folks lived in terror, guys. But you know what? This is kind of one of them unique stories because it's not of a family who has something attacking them and they get scared and they run away. Robert and his family, him and his sons, actually grabbed their weapons and they defend their property. So this story begins, like I said, kind of auspiciously, if you will. It first started with Robert's 16-year-old son had woke up and man, he started screaming and panicking, and of course the dad rushed into the room and you know, wanting to know what was going on, why his son was in full-blown panic mode. Now the panic was because Robert's son had woke up and he had seen a face staring in his window. Now, after they got him calmed down, Robert's son was able to then describe what it was he saw. And guys, red amber eyes, a wide face that looked like a gorilla face, but it stood upright like a human. So basically, what Robert's son had described to him was Sasquatch. Now, the family kind of wrote it off as overactive imagination, maybe bad dream. You know, maybe he had had one of those dreams where he just woke up from it and it just seemed completely real. Now this would happen in May of 1981, and it would not be until the next night that the rest of the family would see what Robert's son saw. Now, in a time when Sasquatch stories were around, but you got to think about where they're at in, you know, Rome, Ohio, 1981, in a rural area. There's probably not a whole lot of television and radio movies going on, but the way this is told is that the family found a deer carcass on their property. Not taken down by nothing, but it had a big slash in its side, and its insides had been, by all accounts, looked like had been eaten. So the next night, the family would kind of be gathered around the living room and everything. They had the radio going, and they started hearing just wild noises coming from the woods. Now, of course, they get up. Dad gets up, goes outside with his flashlight. Better run, dear. Something might be after you. I don't know. But he goes for his flashlight, and as he's outside, he has this flashlight beam going back and forth across the yard. He spots this shadowy figure kind of in the edge of the wood line, and he said the thing he noticed immediately was its eyes, red eyes. So this would be the confirmation sighting that rest of the family would see what Robert's 16-year-old son had saw. Now, some of the animals on their farm had been taken, chickens, ducks, because they basically had a bunch of poultry on their farm. But they weren't completely devoured and carried off, because the bodies would be found with the heads torn off, and what it looked like the guts were eaten out of them. So, you know, kind of being rural and back like I say, we've talked about in other stories that's happened around them time frames. These kids of Roberts and them, they get their gun, and the next night they wait for these creatures to come back. So it does, and they're kind of watching it. Now the animals, of course, on the farm are completely going crazy. They're flailing their wings, flopping around like, you know, they would react when a predator comes around. So Robert pulls up his gun. He sees it, gets it in his sights, and he shoots it. And by all accounts, it's a direct hit, because they said that this thing let out. Something flew in my mouth. Bugs everywhere, guys. Sorry. But something, yeah, this thing had let out a huge scream, loud guttural scream. But they said it never jerked or fell or anything like that. They said it just turned and started running down the edge of the wood line. So Robert and his sons jumped in his truck, and they're following it. And about a half a mile away, they just completely lose it. They don't see it. It's not in the edge of the wood line. And then something weird happens to their truck, which had been running perfectly fine, full of gas. All of a sudden, their truck just dies. It quits running. And that might have been exactly when a little bit of the primal fear set in. Sorry about that, guys. I'd pull over. I got something rattling. I've got to clean my saddlebags out on gas. a sudden, as Robert's truck's sitting on the side of the road, or in the middle of the road rather, one of his neighbors comes driving by, stops, and is everything okay? And Robert and his boys began to tell the neighbor about everything that was going on. And to their surprise, the neighbor wasn't shocked. So they all kind of stood around there for just a little bit, comparing stories. And it seemed like Robert's neighbors were experiencing some of the same things. Noises in the woods, animals disappearing. But as quickly as their truck quit running, Robert turns the key, turns the switch, and it fires back up. They go on home, and they spent the rest of the night kind of huddled up in the living room, waiting for this thing to come back so they could take another shot at it. Now, this is the kind of stuff, guys, that was going on for a while. It went on through the entire month of May. Well, by the time Jude rolled around, a guy named Dennis, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name because I'll just butcher it up, but him and his research team showed up. Now, he is the one who actually wrote the book Night Siege, because, you know, these researchers showed up, and all of a sudden they were involved in the same experiences that Robert and his family was involved in. Now, this thing came back, but when it came back, it wasn't alone. It came back with friends or family, whichever way you want to look at it. Because Dennis, in his account, has said it was just a late, dusky, dark evening, and everybody was kind of sitting out on the porch talking over everything that had been going on, things that had been happening, and they look out into the wood line, and they see these eyes, red eyes, glowing eyes, but it's more than one set. There's somewhere around 7 or 8 sets of these eyes looking back at them. So now they're getting nervous, because obviously whatever they shot was not happy, and he went and got reinforcements. Now, Robert and his sons, like I said earlier, had just came to the conclusion that, hey, this is our home. This is where we live. This is our place. So we're going to defend it. And so they started a new tradition. They climbed on the roof with their guns, pointed toward the woods, and every time they would see one of these things, they would take a pop shot at it. And according to Dennis, this went on for several nights, that these things would show up. Robert and his boys would take shots at it. You know, one of the crazy things, guys, about that is this story here is not a typical Bigfoot story. This one here has it covers UFOs, Bigfoot, paranormal, and one description that even kind of made it seem like there was a dog man involved in this whole situation. But nonetheless, the family would carry on like this for night after night, sleeping during the day. In fact, they got so scared, guys, that they never even left their house. That's how bad it got for them. Now, one of the stories that had happened in May before Dennis had got there was Robert had sold some of the timber out from his property, and a Amish group of loggers showed up with their horses, and they brought about 600 pounds worth of feed. Now, they came and they dropped everything off on the property, getting ready to come in the next day and start logging. But when they come in the next day, all of the feed, 600 pounds worth of feed, was eaten, gone. Ripped open, eaten, and just the sacks remained, I guess. So the Amish people didn't really say a whole lot about it. They just worked that day, brought more feed to feed the horses so the horses could be fed while they were doing this job. And then one evening the Amish group came out, and one of their horses had a big gash up the side of it, like it had been attacked by something in the woods. So the story kind of dead ends right there on the Amish loggers, because it doesn't really tell if they, you know, stayed and finished the job, or if they just packed up and left, because the next thing is where it comes into Dennis showing up and the researchers. But I'll tell you something, guys, that's you know, you think about 600 pounds worth of horse feed. Now back then, grain, oats, you know, the normal stuff that you would give to a horse. When you bring 600 pounds worth of that, you're expecting to be there on that job for just a little while. So it was obvious by that story that whatever Robert and his family was dealing with, they were absolutely dealing with more than one of them. But guys, this story ain't over yet, but I've got to run over here and get some good hot gas and jazz. I got to get me something to drink. And then we're going to continue on with this story, because it just keeps getting weirder and weirder. So y'all don't go nowhere. We'll be back in just a split second. Alright guys, so we have firmly established that this is a wild story with the Bigfoots, but that's not even the craziest part with the Bigfoots and the creatures. Now we get to the lights in the sky. Dennis reported that there was some bluish lights about the size of a basketball, but that they were probably square more than they was round, and that these would shoot lights down into the woods, illuminating all of the woods around it, like making the woods like daylight. And that's when these other creatures appeared. Now these other creatures left behind 3-toed footprints. I guess Dennis classified these as entities more than alien, more than anything else. But this would become a regular part. And these entities seem like that their main goal and their main focus was to lure Robert and his family into the woods. Now, of course, by this point, Robert and his boys had no plans of actually going into the woods, as well as Dennis. But there was a crazy night when something crazy took place. There was a lot of action in the woods that night, and as everybody was scanning the wood lines with their flashlights, all of a sudden one of the guys shined his light out into the field, and there was Robert's horse standing there just in the middle of the field, a little ways away from the edge of the woods. But according to Robert, that's weird, because his horse was locked up tight in the barn. So, not even hesitating, Robert pulled his gun up and shot the horse. A loud scream let out, and when they went to investigate, you could see where this thing had crawled away, not the shadowy figure, but this thing had crawled away into the woods, these other entities. Now this would go on for Robert and his family for a while, guys. Finally, I think it was at the end of June, 1st of July, Robert had had enough, so he called in the local sheriff. The police came in and created a paper trail. They took down 2 different reports, and all they know to do was just to file it under suspicious activity, because they had no explanation for it. So, but decoy horse, and they said the chattering that was happening out in the woods a lot of times would sound like humans that were in distress. So obviously whatever this was trying to lure them into the woods. Now, one of the things that kind of caught my attention with that was that if these entities were this strong, this powerful, or whatever they need to be to do all this, why would they actually need to draw them into the woods just to attack the house? Well, as I listened to more of the story, it kind of became clear that these shots, although seemingly to them didn't seem to be effective, these shots were actually hurting these things. You know, every time they would shoot them, they would scream out in pain. But of course, there was never any blood left behind, never any, you know, splatter or anything like that. Well, I appreciate you flagging me, brother. I see the doggies. Got a road, doggies. But, you know, the sheriff came in, and like I said, he created the beginning of an official paper trail. You know, and I've said this in other videos, and we've talked about this, of course, in past videos about law enforcement being, you know, first responders. They are there they're trained to notice things. They're trained to see what we don't see. They're trained to observe and look at things that we wouldn't even consider looking at. So for the sheriff to show up and for him to have his deputies, because this stuff was happening while the sheriff was there too, guys. I mean, it wasn't just happening to the research team and to Robert and his family. The sheriff actually got to see these things happening as well. So, you know, the sheriff leaves with just suspicious activity. And this goes on, and it kind of comes to a head one night, the best I can tell, across the road from Robert's house, in a big tree. One of these lights appear, and the entity gets shot out of it as per normal. And as it's climbing down through the branches, Robert and his boys are shooting at it the whole time. It hits the ground with a thud and then scurries off into the woods across the road. Now, Robert would sort of, the way this story ended, Robert would sort of make a confession to Dennis and to Dennis's research team that he believed that somehow when his son saw the Bigfoot that first night at his window, that somehow his son became linked to these things. Now, they never did go on to expand on that or to, you know, give us any more than that. But guys, check it out for yourself. The story is called Night Siege. The book is called Night Siege, based on the true events of Rome, Ohio. Oh man, guys, but yeah, Night Siege, you know, that's and now that I've kind of laid out what the facts of it is, man, that's, you know, you could easily say that this reads like a sci-fi story or a horror story, just whichever way you want to whichever way you want to put it out there. But there's no doubt that things like that happen, and then the reality of the situation of whatever these entities were, whatever they were doing, you know, I think it's very safe to say that they meant Robert and his family harm, because, like I said, by everything that was reported and by all of the reports, you know, seemingly it seemed like they were trying to lure him and his family into the woods for whatever reason. But yeah, man, guys, Like I said in the beginning of the video, I have seen the blackberries start to, they're starting to get those wider screen bulbs on them, so we'll be passing through in that another little cold spell here, which we've been in the morning times for the last couple of days with the rain. But over the next couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, the blackberries will start blooming. Get on through blackberry winter, and then won't be long till we'll be in summer. And guys, it won't be long until May the 16th, 17th, and 18th is going to be here. And we're going to be staring GAM, the Georgia Motorcycle Meetup, right down the barrel. I haven't looked out that far ahead. Now, in the timeline from here, we're probably still about a good 3 weeks away from GAM. I haven't looked that far ahead in the forecast to see what they're predicting might possibly happen between now and then. But, you know, as I said in the original video that I made with Doyle and Beth when we were at the Blue Sky Inn, I'm not riding in the rain. I'm not going to purposely leave out in the rain. If I get caught in the rain, that's one thing. But I just don't have it in me to purposely leave out in the rain. But there it is, guys. Our first, you know, this one covers Bigfoot, paranormal, UFOs, dogmen. So let me know what y'all think about the Night Siege. I'd like to give a special shout out to the channel What Lurks Beneath. His channel, and then a bunch of stuff that I read, and I read a lot of my stuff off of Google and Bing. Mainly when I do that, I'm just looking for dates and specific moments. But yeah, man, guys, the Night Siege, crazy story. But guys, I'll tell you what, I think we're going to say we got this cryptids episode in the bag. So y'all remember to go back, take a look at our old catalog. If you like what you see, maybe consider giving a like, a share, a comment on it. And if you really like what you see and you think that may be for you, consider hitting that subscribe button. But guys, until the next time, y'all take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and hey, thanks for watching.